Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, BH Chat. I was to say BH Chat because I'm using B and H as a Portuguese pronunciation because I'm from Brazil. But this show is not about me. This show is about like great musicians that I had the pleasure to work with over the years living here in New York City. And my name is Bill Hagen. I am the founder of BH Concert Productions, and this is our YouTube channel to give you some inside information about what happens in New York City when it comes to music making, mostly church music because that's what I love, and you know, choral music has everything to do with church music. And today, what can I say about this guy? So I met him in 2014 doing an audition for the church where he works with until this day. 2014, it's been 10 years. Yeah. Everybody's getting old. Everybody's getting old. Okay. So, and you know, this conversation, like, it gives me a lot of joy because I consider him one of my dear friends here in New York City. And you know, since I came here in 2012, I had the pleasure to work with him for 7 years straight. And it was a really rewarding experience. But I'm not gonna talk about me, I'm gonna talk about him. Please welcome, together with me, welcome John Cantrell.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Bill. Good to be here.
Of course, thank you so much. So, John, the first question that I ask all my interviewees, I learned this word recently, so interviewees. Because you know, most people on the internet may not know you and what you do. So I would ask you to introduce yourself in a way like, what do you do and who you are? Tell me.
Okay, sure. John Cantrell, Sagittarius, long walks on the beach. No, kidding. So I am primarily an organist and a choir master for a historic Episcopal church here in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And I think like a lot of musicians, I wear several hats. Like I said, primarily I work with singers and I play the organ. I also do a fair amount of jazz, keyboard playing, and I play other instruments as well. And I do a fair amount of audio engineering work. I like to keep myself busy in multiple facets of artistic expression and so forth.
That's awesome. So I always say this, I have so many questions because I know that you guys are curious about what he just said. But you know, let's take back a little bit in the past. How did you find out that you want to be a musician? Walk us through like the first contact that you had with music and from that until like, I'm gonna do this professionally.
Yeah, so my father had a really great record collection, anything from bluegrass to country to jazz to classical, and I think like so many kids, you know, the first introduction to classical music was like Warner Brothers cartoons, Looney Tunes, and I remember the first classical album my father bought was Tchaikovsky 1812 Overture, and it was just, it was mind-blowing. And so, distinctly, my strongest memory is when I was 6, I was staying up late one night watching Saturday Night Live with my mom. And John Belushi comes out on stage. Now, this is obviously dating myself. But John Belushi comes out on stage and he's dressed like Beethoven. And he sits down to the piano and he starts playing Furlies or something like that. And the other cast who's around him, they're saying, oh, what a pity, he can't hear what he's doing, and so forth. And the cast departs, leaving John Belushi by himself at the piano. And he kind of looks around to see if everybody's watching. He starts rocking out. I went, oh, that's what I want to do!
Nice.
That's all I've done since.
That's so cool because as he said already, he plays a lot of instruments, and I am a witness of that because most church people here in New York City, they are really concentrated, like they are really focused on the organ music and choral music. But John, as he said, he plays everything. He plays any style and he plays a lot of instruments. How many instruments do you play?
Well, I suppose I could say any keyboard instrument. I play a host of string instruments, guitars, I play bass, percussion instruments. There was a time I was in early music ensembles playing krumhorn and
Wow.
recorders. I sometimes joke, I'll play whatever pays the rent.
Oh, I love that joke
Yeah.
because I am the same way. Like I sing, if you're paying me to sing, I sing everything. But even though I may not be as good as in many different styles.
Yeah, I
but,
have to interrupt and just attest, he can sing anything.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So, going back to the Saturday Night Live, I
Yeah.
have other questions. Do you remember, like, he was dressed up as Beethoven and everybody laughed and he started rocking the piano?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what he was playing?
Oh, he was just playing some boogie woogie or rock and roll kind of thing. It wasn't any particular song that I recall. He was just something about the dynamic of the moment and the intensity and the delivery of what he was doing. I was absolutely hooked.
And you know, what I know that you play lots of styles, and you said like boogie style and everything.
Yeah.
I am assuming that you know how to play that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just like a basic thing. So, but another question that I have. So you were 60 years old.
Yep.
And then, where you were living at that time?
Yeah, I was living in a small town called Russell, Kentucky, which eastern Kentucky, right where the Ohio and West Virginia border meet the state. And it's a pretty depressed place. Lots of, within sort of a 30-mile radius, there was oil refining, coal mines. There's a prominent steel mill, and classical music was not heard very often in that part of the world. But I don't know, my father was a military man, so prior to living in Kentucky, we had been stationed in Germany for a few years, and so my early years had some, second culture experience. So moving to eastern Kentucky, which is where most of my family is from, it took a little bit of adapting, but nothing but immense gratitude for my dad's love of music, because that definitely funneled over into my love for it.
Of course. And where did you, because you said that in a small town in Kentucky and people didn't have like that much experience with classical music, how did you start studying that?
Yeah, so I think like so many people, sort of a local church musician who had some knowledge in music was the local music teacher. And I studied with her for a few years. And then I guess my freshman year of high school, I was introduced to a very eccentric older lady in the nearby town of Ashland, Kentucky, who just happened to have been a Fulbright scholar, and she studied with the legendary Helmut Walsche, a prominent German organist who had trained quite a few American organists as part of the Fulbright program. And so from my freshman year through my senior year, I studied with her, and I studied piano, and I started some organ study with her, and learned tons from her. I mean, I count myself lucky that in the middle of God's country, that there was this random person that.
And that you can say that changed your life for the better.
Did you ever see the film Madame Swatka?
No, but tell us about it.
It's a story about a music teacher who believes that you're not only there to teach music, but you're also there to shape and mold the life of the student, whether it's grammar, etiquette, and so forth. And so she had a very prominent role in hammering out my thick Eastern Kentucky accent.
Oh.
And you cannot walk out onto the stage at Carnegie Hall and say, I'm going to play Beethoven for y'all. It's so musically a healthy relationship. Otherwise, maybe not so much a healthy relationship, but I still learned a lot.
Awesome. So go ahead.
Musicians and being eccentric go hand in hand.
Oh, yeah. We are crazy. We are just crazy. Yeah, I just got to that realization a couple of years back. Like, we are just crazy. Like, how on earth you are able, like, in today's society, I believe any time of the history of the world, like making money with art, it's something pretty challenging to say the least.
Sure.
The least. But you know, and everybody needs money and all of that stuff. So you said, I want to tell you a quick story.
Here we go.
You said about Carnegie Hall and your accent and like, oh, you know, you cannot go to Carnegie Hall and speaking like that, that kind of thing. It remembers me like, I'm not gonna say the date, but I went to a Carnegie Hall concert once, and it was like a presentation, like a performance of students. You know, people that are not exactly like professional musicians or whatever. It was a performance of students, and you know, it was nice. But there was one specific number. I don't know if you guys know Sarah Bareilles, like a songwriter and artist. Like, she's mainstream-ish, let's say this, and she has a great song called Gravity that she wrote, and it's like a ballad.
Is that from the Broadway?
No, not the one from the Broadway. Like, it was like something I don't turn it back to you. I don't know the lyrics or whatever. So, and the girl was singing, and the guy messed up the chords because he didn't know like the map of the song. You know, he went to the chorus and she was singing the verse, and it was a mess. And I witnessed that at Carnegie Hall, and I was thinking to myself, like, you know, I'm in Carnegie Hall, New York City. I paid a fairly expensive ticket. You know, I just went blindly to the show. Like, I didn't know anything. Like, you know, it's a Friday night, let's go. And I saw people butchering a relatively easy song at Carnegie's Hall stage in front of Carnegie's audience. And I was like, I couldn't shake the feeling that it's the decay of the quality of our music making as a society. Like, you know, it's all about money, because I have the understanding, a lot, I may be wrong, but you know, when you pay, and you pay the fee, you can do anything. You don't need to be good or whatever. Do you have any experiences with that, like people paying and having, like, you know, some venue, some exposure, just because they paid, not exactly because of the thing?
So I've had the fortune of playing Carnegie about 12 times.
Awesome.
And most of those experiences were as a hired orchestral player. And so there's companies like Mid-America and I'm trying to think what their competitor is, but essentially choral ensembles and instrumental groups will pay large sums of money to a place like Mid-America, they will rent Carnegie, they will hire a conductor, and so you might get a performance of Verdi Requiem with 300 singers and full orchestra, but the experience is essentially bought. So there isn't always that guarantee that the choral group that's coming from other side of the country is going to be as experienced as another group that's coming. So, you know, they come together, they have a few days of rehearsals, and you make the best of it that you can. The orchestra tends to be made up of players that are local, so it always tends to be really top notch. So in those dozen or so performances in which I've assisted, some of them have been absolutely phenomenal, and some of them, well, just kind of okay. I mean, I to say Carnegie Hall, as you were expressing, it's hallowed ground, right? And so you expect to be transformed and transcended in some way, and I think there's always the reality that we're all human, and it happens sometimes, even in the most sacred of ground.
Have you ever had an opportunity like you messed up in a performance, but messed up in a way that everybody realized? Because as you guys may realize, as John said, like, we are human, and sometimes we mess up life. Even though we studied, even though we know what we're doing, but sometimes there is a brain fog, or there is something that distracts us. Like, for instance, I'm giving this interview and my cat is making noises. And I'm not gonna cut this out because I feel like it's cute and this is real life. It's a real conversation, not that staged.
John Cage would enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
Stockhausen might enjoy it.
Yeah. So my question is, have you ever had an experience that you were performing and you messed up completely? Like everybody knew that you messed up. Have you ever had that experience?
Sure.
Would you mind tell us about it?
Well, so I think the first memories of things like that are doing public piano recitals as part of, there's like the music educators groups in various states. So when I was in Kentucky, my piano teacher had me entering group piano recitals, and I remember playing some Chopin or something and having memory slip-ups or just outright horribly wrong notes. It happens, and it's always how do you recover.
Exactly. You know, I was watching a video, whatever, TikTok, Instagram, like those short videos, and I heard Barbara Corcoran. I don't know if you know her, but she's like a real estate mogul in New York City. Everybody knows her. If you've seen Shark Tank, she's one of the sharks. But and she said exactly this, like, it doesn't matter how many times you fall. What matters is how fast you can recover from that. So instead of like, oh my God, I messed up that audition or that whatever, and you feel sorry about yourself and you feel like you're not good enough, you need to shake that feeling and go back on track.
So side thought here, one of the gigs that I've had in the city is being an audio engineer, and I've been able to work with some astonishing singers, and some of which were part of the development of jazz back in the day. I remember sessions with Marlene Verplank, John Hendricks, where these are people who were the highest echelon of their craft, and yet in the session they would make mistakes and we'd have to stop, and it's a great reminder that even the people that we idolize are human, and we're constantly refining our craft, as it were.
Yeah.
Was it Casal, the cellist? They asked him when he was 90 years old, why are you still practicing? And because he's like, I think I'm finally getting it, So,
Oh my God, yeah, that's the reality. Now that you said about we were talking about Carnegie Hall and experiences in New York City. Walk us through, like, you were in Kentucky, high school, with that teacher and doing piano recitals and all of that stuff. What happened in your life that you decided to move to New York City? And how long was that? How long ago was that?
Yeah. So I did my undergraduate education at the University of Louisville, and after Louisville I went to Yale University for my master's, which was in organ performance, sacred music studies. And I finished in 2002, and then I took the job as the choir master and organist at the Episcopal Cathedral in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was there for a few years. And unfortunately, the finances at the cathedral were pretty bad. And this seems to be a common thread amongst the Protestant church these days. But so this gig came open in New York City, and I think there were probably over 200 applicants for it. And
when you say gig, like a job opportunity?
Yeah. So the St. Michael's Episcopal Church is where I've been for the past 18 years. It seems hard to believe. And I remember it took, from the time I applied to the job to the actual interview, it took about a year.
Really?
Yeah.
And during that year, they didn't have an organist, or they would have a...
Oh, they had an interim.
Okay,
Yeah.
an intern. Okay, but why did you decide to apply for that position in New York City?
Well, so in the world of full-time organ gigs in this country, they are far and few. If I was to pull up the resources for finding full-time work as a choir master and organist, you might find 20 listings. across the country right now that are full-time.
Wow.
So it's a very competitive field.
But when you say competitive field, like you're talking about just the Episcopal Church, or you're talking overall?
No, I'm speaking overall.
Overall.
Yeah. Well, I should say finding full-time work that pays a salary that you can actually live on. I mean, there's plenty of churches out there that are clamoring for an organist, and they'll pay peanuts, which just, you know, they don't value music enough as a means of building their programming and building their church and so forth.
So another question that I have, curious about your opinion. You've been at St. Michael's Episcopal Church for 18 years. So from the start of your job, like from the very first year to 18 down the line, did you realize any patterns in terms of like the attendance, or in terms of the quality of the music making? It has changed, it didn't change, it got better? Like, what's your assessment of the market? I know that you're most focused on St. Michael's, but overall, because you've been working here for 18 years, and as you said, you don't do just that, like you do a bunch of different stuff. Do you realize any trends, like anything that shift, like over the past 18 years?
Okay, certainly there are shifts, there are changes, because there are natural cycles in the lifespan of any music program. Certainly some things have been consistent, and this is a can of worms, and it will probably not win me any fans.
Of course.
So St. Michael's is kind of an extraordinary place. I believe it's probably one of the most diverse parishes in the city. I mean, it's black, it's white, it's Asian, it's gay, it's lesbian, it's partridge in a pear tree. And that has been something that has beautifully been consistent, very open and affirming. And I think one of the things I've always been frustrated with the music scene here. So we're centrally located between Juilliard and Manhattan School of Music. There's a lot of musicians who come in and out through our doors, and I hear a lot of auditions, and again, this is not going to win me any favors or any fans, but something that has been consistent is that there's a lot of world-class voices that come to an audition, and astonishing talent. But there's certain other skills that seem to be falling by the wayside, like sight reading seems to be a challenge. And most of the professional singers that I hire are people who've grown up in choral traditions, or people who are instrumentalists, because they seem to have an exponentially larger capacity for sight reading than people who just go through a vocal program. And I don't say that to be insulting. It's been the reality that I've experienced, and so.
So back then, you were able to find more people that would be able to sight read in a nice level than today. Like back then, it was a little better than today, or it always been this way. Like, you know.
I think it's been fairly consistent, honestly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So. At St. Michael's, we work at a really fast pace, and as you remember, like we would sing Compline, for example, and the rehearsal would be 30 minutes for a 20-minute service, and my singers would read a piece by Palestrina. They'd read it 2 times, 3 at the most, and they'd have it. Like they just understood it, and singers like that are just worth their weight in gold, whether they have a music degree or not.
Yeah. So another question that I have, since we are talking about music and we are talking about the education, like, because according to his opinion, like you have world-class voices in New York City, but sight reading seems to be a challenge for a fair amount of people. So, in terms of like, what do you look for? Like, if you want to hire a singer, what exactly that singer needs to bring to the table to be considered as a to be hired by you?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for asking. So, musical skills are one thing. You know, I like people who are versatile with different styles of music. If you can sing a Bach aria and then follow it up with something that is dramatically different and contrasting, I think that's fantastic. So, tone, and then when it comes to sight reading, you know, I never expect anyone to read anything perfect the first time, and I'm not giving overly complicated pieces to sight read. You know, there's going to be some Palestrina because that's kind of the meat and potatoes of a lot of the sacred repertoire. I will give something that is mid 20th century, that is in kind of the traditional Anglican repertoire, and I'll give something that's a little bit more modern that might have some jazz influence. But I never expect anyone to read perfectly, but I want to see, how does their brain work? What happens the second time around? What happens the third time around? And, you know, I know that if I have to start spoon feeding notes from the piano, then they're just not the right match. And then, you know, on top of all that stuff, are they a kind person? Like, will we get along? You know, that's important. Like, if you're going to work really closely with people and you're going to be making music together, which, you know, let me just say it right off the bat, is like one of the greatest joys in life is to make music with other people.
I agree.
If you really like this person and you're doing something profound together, like creating art, it's just the greatest thing in the world. And I don't know, being able to have that camaraderie is worth everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I have singers that have been on my staff for 18 years, and it's just because there is that, you know, that's that bond.
Oh, amazing, because as you said, and I agree 100%, like, I feel like making music, it's a vulnerable thing. You need to be there.
Yeah.
And if you are there and you are 100% there, like, people can see that, and people can have a feeling of I'm gonna get esoterical for a moment. People can sense better your soul because you're 100% there. And you know, when you go to an audition, like, you know, from the other side of the aisle, like I go to auditions very often, and you know, it happens, like, sometimes I cannot sight read perfectly the first time.
Yeah, let me just interrupt. When Bill auditioned for me, he read everything perfectly the first time.
Oh, thank you.
As a matter of fact, I didn't even have to give him a starting pitch. He just, it's like, he said, I'm like, yeah, you're hired. That's it. Come on.
Thank you. But he didn't say that at the moment, okay? Just because now we know each other, like, he had the freedom to say that. But, you know, in a professional setting, like, you know, since we are talking about my audition, like, I was here since 2012, and I had 2 experiences working for different churches here in New York, and I was trying to find a new church. And I found this beautiful church on the Upper West Side, St. Michael's, and I met John. And one thing that struck me, like, the church was beautiful, but it wasn't like an old church. It didn't look old, but it looked traditional. I don't know what's going on down there right now, because they are going through some renovations and everything. But when I met John, like, he was, oh, please sight read this for me, and I sight read. And then, oh, now this one, and I sight read. And I was like, am I doing it correctly? Because he's not saying anything. And then I sang my piece, and he said, oh, can you do more tall vowels? And I was like, oh, I screwed up. Like, he hates my voice. Oh, it's not on my... And, you know, but we get crazy. Like, because it's, you know, again, it's a vulnerable situation. Like, I'm going to audition for someone that is willing to give me money. He's deciding if he's gonna give me money or not for me to make a sound with my vocal cords. Like it's so the exposure, like the thing, like you need to be very vulnerable to do that. And when you are in that vulnerability, like if you get a feedback that it's not exactly positive or you don't get the job or whatever, it hurts.
Oh,
it
sure.
hurts.
Well, let me just say that I personally have gone through auditions as a singer, and I know exactly what you're saying when it comes to that vulnerability, and I'm very much aware as each person comes into audition for me that they're feeling the same thing, and I try to have as kind and painless audition as possible. You make people feel genuinely welcome and appreciated for their time.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Like I felt really welcomed, and then thank God he hired me, and we worked together for 7 years. It was amazing. Like
we did a tour together.
oh yeah, we went.
We did 2 tours together. Or no,
just one. Yeah,
okay.
We went to back in the day when everybody had a little bit of more money and we had more funds.
Yeah.
We went to France. It was my very first time and only time that I've been to France, and I got some of my pieces performed at what's the name of the cathedral that just got
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, of course.
Yeah.
Notre Dame, and another one in
Chartres.
yeah, Chartres. Oh,
Yeah, and then we were in Orléans.
Orléans, yes, Orléans. And it was like, I was in New York 2012. Didn't know that much of English, like I knew the basics or whatever. And in 3 years, I see myself in France singing my pieces with great people because everybody's nice and everybody's really talented, especially coming from Brazil, which it's not part of our culture in Brazil to have this music making at that level because it's not commercial enough. Like people cannot make money with that. I remember when I arrived here in New York, like I was like, oh, they have a market for choral music. I can make money with choral music. I'm in heaven. And that was exactly my thing. But going back, like France, amazing place. Please go, please visit. So going back to the thing, I really like that we are touching this subject about like the audition process and the human process of auditioning, because maybe you that are watching this and you're thinking like, oh, I want to up my career and I want to go to New York and try my best or whatever. I know that it's tough. Because it's tough for everybody, because here you compete with everybody from the entire world. Like if you want to make good things, you know that you're in the right place, because here we have everything happening. And but there is the human aspect. Like you need to be a nice human being, like what John was saying. Like you don't need to say any names, but have you ever had an experience with a singer that you hired, but you saw down the line, I think it's not a good fit? You don't need to say any names, but have you ever had that experience?
So in my 18 years, I like to think that I'm really good about hiring people that collectively we will all be very happy together with. And there's only been one experience where I've had to fire somebody, and
just one in 18 years.
Yeah, just one in the 18 years.
That's good. That's good.
People who've come through my program and have since left, 9 times out of 10 left on really great terms. They were moving to another part of the country, they were getting married, and blah, blah, blah. I had one person I fired who, lovely person, marvelous voice, good sight reader. They just showed up late all the time.
Oh.
And sometimes there just wasn't an excuse. They're just late, and I gave several warnings, and it just had to be done.
Yeah, and things that are so, because being late or being on time, it doesn't have to do with talent. Like you don't need to work hard for that. Like, and you are in New York City. Like we have subways. It's not exactly like the most reliable sort of transportation, but it's still good because you can go pretty much anywhere in the city in 30 minutes. And if you're conscious about your time and everything, like you can get there. Like you don't need to be consistently getting late to your appointment. So this is one thing that is really important that he's saying, like, oh, but just because I'm late, like I'm so talented, I have everything that they ask, but I'm constantly late. That could be a problem. Yes, that could be a problem, and you have the witness right here. So another question that I have, like now talking about New York City, because you know the purpose of this chat that I have with amazing people is like to give them inside information about the core music market and the music making market here in New York City, especially focused on choral music and church music. Like, what would you say to someone that's considering moving here to pursue that career path? Like what would you say that the city wants from you, or what it's needed for you to make it here, like in your opinion?
That's that's a hard question to answer, and I think if somebody figured out the perfect formula to answer that, they would publish the book. They would be living very well off the publication. I think having diverse skills is primary, number one. You have to be able to do a lot of different things, I think, just to get yourself established. You know, as far as like making a living as a composer, you don't necessarily have to live here, but as a singer, there's something to be said for the random opportunities that fall on your lap just from being here. When I first came to New York, I guess it was a month or two that I had been here. So one of our parishioners, his partner just happened to work for Mid-America. And just random conversation, and his partner says, oh my gosh, my rehearsal accompanist had to cancel. I need somebody to play. I think he may have even been very direct with him or something like that. I need somebody who can just step in and, you know, maybe just do a few rehearsals. And so I said, okay, I can do it. And I was just at the right place at the right time.
Nice.
And that led to playing Carnegie.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you had said to me within a month of being in New York and you play Carnegie, I'm like, right, whatever. It's just weird things like that. By random chance, I got to be John Rutter's accompanist. I mean, it's just
really.
But
wow.
That's because I'm here. You run into artists all the time. I walked into a Starbucks once, and Peter Q. Bach was sitting there, and of course I had to go up to him and say, Mr. Shickley, I just want you to know that your sonata inamorata single-handedly got my wife and I together. And he's like, I'm very sorry. So
that's funny.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many musicians I know who just wear multiple hats to make ends meet so that they can do this thing that we love to do.
Yeah, very good, like versatility.
Yeah, I know very few. I'm trying to think. There was a book published a while back by a flautist from one of the symphonies here, and it was about what it means to be successful as a musician in New York, and
nice.
You know, to distill the story down, it was essentially this person saying, well, the rent's paid and there's food on the table and my kids are in school and they're fed and clothed, therefore I'm a successful musician.
Of course.
Yeah, it's easy to romanticize what it means to be a musician living in New York. The reality is it's really hard all the time. But is it worth it? Yeah.
Yeah, for us that are living here for more than decades, like for me, like 12 years, for John, 18 years. So it's hard every day. It doesn't get any easier, but you get used to it because you are, I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel like I'm improving. Like just being here because of the opportunities, and you know, for my actual church job, I got to sing in a Bach aria, which was pretty challenging, and quite honestly, I didn't feel like I did a good job because I'm very conscious about my voice, but this is besides the point, and we already talked about this. But when on earth I would be challenged at this level in a church job? You know what I mean? And I feel like New York gives you that opportunity to challenge yourself. And of course, sometimes you get tired, like, I don't want to be challenged every single day or whatever, but it's just the grinding of it, and you're getting better.
Yeah.
Now, my next question, because we are talking about New York City.
Can I add
Yes,
one
go
thing?
ahead, go ahead.
A case in point about how kind of astonishing the music scene is here. When I first came to New York, I was doing a couple of Bach and Tyler performances, and I will never forget the same weekend that we were performing, there was something like 6 or 7 St. Matthew Passions taking place in the city.
Wow.
And that's double orchestra,
Wow.
double choir. I mean, just the astonishing number of musicians that live here. I mean, at one point at St. Michael's, there was, I'm trying to think, there was a bassoon quartet, we had a viola da gamba ensemble in residence, there was multiple jazz musicians, numerous organists, the choir master, or the former choir master from the Metropolitan Opera was in the congregation. We had a Van Cliburn winner in the congregation.
Wow.
So you talk about being challenged and always wanting to improve. Having sort of this influx of musicians, between Manhattan School and between Juilliard and Manus, it's like I always feel like I got to be on my A game.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, because John says like, you psych read during your audition, because I knew that, especially coming from overseas. Like if you have the opportunity to see where I studied music, like in college, we didn't have toilet paper. There was no toilet paper, so that was the level. Obviously, because it's art and everything, it's not that detrimental to the music making, because artists, the art comes from within. As long as you have a piano, you can make some stuff happen and everything. But even though, like, we had strikes that I lost a whole semester.
Wow.
Just because of strikes. And this reality, I came from this reality, and I knew for a fact, like, I am under. I need to go up, and because if I want to compete with these people that have been here for I don't know how many years, and people that are Americans, they don't have the language barrier or anything, like oh, I'm from I don't know, Louisiana, I'm from Boston or whatever, and the people have that camaraderie because we are from the same country. I didn't have that, and I was really conscious about that. And like when I go to auditions, like I go like I need to do the best I can because I'm competing with other people that are as good as me or even better than me, and they have access to a better education.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you spoke about, or you asked me about things that are consistent, things that are change, very cycles in our musical experience. I think that can be asked about your personal, your spirit as a musician. Like, as for myself, I go through cycles where burnout is overwhelming, and I sometimes wonder if I will ever love music again. And I'll have a random moment where maybe I'll hear somebody just humming a song to themselves, and I'll think it's the greatest thing I've ever heard in my life. What about yourself? I mean, do you go through cycles of profound burnout to you can't get enough?
The source of my burnout, like, I don't work with music 24/7 because as a singer, I don't have the technical skills to play piano and to be an accompanist. But I studied piano, and my formation is like as a composer, and I love writing music. And for you to convince people that you have value, that your music is worth listening to, like it's really hard because you are no one. Like I used to be a no one here in the city. So my source of burnout comes from having to do other things other than composing. Because I cannot make a living just living off commissions or all of that, because they give I will give you $250 to write this arrangement for me or to write a commission for me, and I feel like you cannot make a living with that because it's not that much. So I feel like the burnout exists, but for me the language is always a barrier, because I am very self-conscious about my English speaking, and if I started too much, even doing interviews, it's like, oh my god, I cannot forget this word, or I am taking too long to shape this phrase, this sentence. So I'm self-conscious about that. This is a source of stress. Also, like competing with other people, like the competition here is so high, like in terms of I'm a composer, but there are other composers as good as I am, or even better, because they play the organ, they play piano, and I don't.
But as a music director, I feel charged with the responsibility to support living composers. And so when you were working at St. Michael, it was kind of a win-win situation.
Yes.
I was able to do a lot of your music, and we were able to capture video and recording, and so while we might not have the financial resources to commission a new work every year, our way of supporting would be to here's a choir that is professional in quality, they can record your music, and you can use this as part of your calling card, so to speak.
Yes, and I'm very grateful for that, because John is one of the few people that really believed in me in terms of my composition skills. Like he welcomed my compositions, and here even now and then, like he programs my music, and I really appreciate that. So my next question.
Psalm 23, 8-part setting. Choral directors, you really need to pick that up.
Oh, thank you. It's published.
Yeah.
But if you send me an email, we can work something out. Let's. So, a question that I have for you, since we are talking about the burnout and everything, how do you deal with burnout? What do you do to get? Because we talked about in the beginning, like what matters is how fast you can go back up.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do when you are burned out? Like,
so this is it's a difficult question to answer, because the burnout comes in various ways. It's not just the choral music. I counted one year over the course of an academic season, like we were singing somewhere between 400 and 500 pieces of choral repertoire, and not just general anthems. We're talking substantial pieces of choral repertoire, challenging stuff, and it got to the point that every Sunday just felt like another opening of another show, and it's sometimes hard to keep your spirit true about why you're doing what you're doing and so forth. And then there's the performance side of things as an organist. Like I spent half my life in a practice room. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in a practice room. And when it comes to solo performing, I reached a point, especially around the pandemic, where I don't really want to be a solo organist anymore.
Really?
Yeah. It's too lonely. I love making music with people. And I feel spiritually connected and energized doing that. But if I never play another organ concert, it'll probably be okay.
Really?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I still enjoy playing repertoire. I still enjoy keeping my skills up. But it's so lonely.
Yeah, I hear you, because you're studying by yourself, and the organ naturally is so loud, like there is no room for conversations and drink coffee. Like, you need to get this done.
Yeah, and one of the funny thing is, I've had experiences of playing Carnegie. I've had experiences of performing abroad as a solo performer, as an organist, And sometimes I think the happiest musical moments I've ever had in my life were just playing in a band in a bar with friends.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Because I feel like, I don't know if you agree with me, but when you put the heaviness of I need to work,
Yeah.
and it has to be done every week
Yeah.
and consistently, regardless of how you're feeling.
Yeah.
You may be under the weather, like, oh, I got a cold or whatever, I don't want to play, but you have to. And I feel like that takes away a little bit of the joy. I don't know
It
if
can.
you agree.
It can. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes, yeah. And you know, when you said like, you know, playing with friends in a barn or whatever, I remember one thing, like when I heard of Randall Thompson's Hallelujah, which is a classical. Please
Yeah.
listen to this. Listen to this. For me, it's one of the top core pieces ever written.
It's an old chestnut, but it's worth repeating.
And I had the, you know, I remember a moment. I even get emotion for that, but I'm not gonna cry on camera. I know
It's
better.
okay. You're in good company. You wouldn't be surprised.
So I remember that I was 20 years old, and I was in a different state in Brazil, like back in the day, and I was singing for a high school / college choir. Like it was a choir that they would take like the last year the high schoolers, and you know that the people that want to pursue music, and they would put together with college freshman people, like, and I was one of the freshman people, and it was a young choir, like we had our ages like 18 to 30. And you know, young voices, like, don't get me wrong, but young voices, because the instrument is younger and you have more strength and all that stuff, because it responds better. Of course, we don't have the experience as an experienced singer, but you know, our voices are fresh, and you know, not that much vibrato, and everything blends really well because you know the voices are not as trained as, you know, nobody was a soloist or anything. And I was rehearsing that in a stadium, in an empty stadium with the people, and you know the reverberation, like the acoustics. And I was singing that song, and nobody's going out of tune or whatever because I'm always listening. And it was a moment that I'll never forget. And you know, it wasn't like, oh, I'm doing a gig or I'm singing with professionals. It wasn't anything like that, but it was just the music making, the raw music making.
Yeah, you know, I hear that, and to me, that experiences like that are rare moments of unity consciousness. Like everybody is in that same cerebral space and same spiritual space. Those are the moments you live for.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. So now changing a little, not changing that much the topic, but we were talking about beautiful experiences in music. But you know, we can have beautiful experiences in music and making money and doing work because that's what we do. So it's good anyway, but you know, there are those special moments. So my question is, what's your favorite instrument to play? I know that this is gonna be tricky, but that's I'm asking.
Oh, that's it'll change every day of the week.
Really?
Yeah.
This week?
Yeah. So at St. Michael's we have this North German neo-baroque organ, which is an amazing instrument that is a joy to play. We also have a mid-1950s Hammond organ, which is amazing for jazz and gospel. And two completely different instruments, and I find immense joy in being able to use both of them. Or, I don't know, sometimes just picking up a guitar and strumming some pretty jazz chords can be really gratifying. It's just like whatever genre of music I'm listening to at the time. I can be just as joyful in the middle of bluegrass as I can in the middle of Bach, as I can in the middle of bebop. It's just, yeah, I think whatever catches my ear at that moment.
Yeah, it's because from what you're saying,
I also enjoy playing the theremin. I have a theremin in my.
Oh, the I love that one. I love it.
It's the instrument you don't touch. But.
Yeah. So from what you're saying, like music, I feel like it transcends the vehicle in a way. Like for instance, like he has joy playing strumming the guitar, and then he has a different kind of joy, but it's the same, but it's different because it's a different vehicle, it's a different instrument. But music is there. Music is, I feel like I don't know if you agree with me. I feel like music is the internet, and the devices that you connect with the internet can be a cell phone, it can be a laptop, it can be a big computer, it can be a Mac, whatever. Everybody, an Android, like we have different systems, like we have different instruments, but everybody's tuning to that big thing that it's music. And that image came to my brain when you said that, because I don't have, like, it changes every time, because I have so much joy playing this kind of organ, I have so much joy playing other things, and then I go to the guitar and I have joy. Then I've seen him playing percussion, like because there are aspects of music that you can explore.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Van Morrison he sang a song about going into the mystic. Prince would say something to the effect of, let's see where the vibe takes us. I mean, it's hard to extemporize on something that is such an extension of the spirit or the cerebral aspects of our expression as artists. I mean, yeah.
Do you see yourself doing anything else other than music? Like, everything goes really bad, like the world is ending, like there is no music anymore. Do you see yourself doing anything that is not related to music at all?
So in times of extreme burnout, I have certainly asked myself, can I do this the rest of my life? And inevitably, I hear something that just gives me that fire in the belly again. And I've always had some faith in that, like something will bring me full circle back around. And it's what I have always done, it's what I've always known. And I think the answer is no, I probably will not do anything else. This will be what I do the rest of my life. And this is what I feel gives my life meaning, and I really like helping others tap into that mystical experience, for lack of a better expression. I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
I love that because in that I'm gonna say some stuff because I agree 100%, like my core agrees with that, because recently I was going through some situations that I'm not gonna get into the details because it's not about me, and the moments that I felt more happier, the moments in my life that I felt like, oh, this is good. It doesn't have to do with money. It doesn't have to do with anything. It's when you do what you're supposed to do. And I got to this realization like a couple of years ago, like I need to make music and I have to be making music, even though like I may work at the office or I may do any other different stuff, like I do marketing and I do like office management and all of that stuff. But when I'm writing something, I feel whole. You know what I mean? And I sense that from you, like when you say like, even in moments of burnout, like I hear a piece of music and it brings me back like the fire in the belly, like, and I really like that idea. And what I would say, like if you can take anything from this video, is like, we do music and we don't have that many other options, and we chose that, like in a sense, but it feels like music chose us. I feel like it's corny, whatever, but that's exactly how I feel.
I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned, being at least in the sacred music profession, it's like when you're doing music day in, day out, 24/7, the burnout is one thing. Yes, I get that. Sometimes it's easy to take for granted what you do. Like, okay, another gig, fine. But I think humility has been a lesson to be learned, because when you go through conservatory programs, like you come out with very fixed ideas about what is quality music, what is artful music, and for the parish at St. Michael's, sometimes I'll choose hymns that I personally just abhor. I think they're terrible. But somebody will come up after the service in tears. My mother sang that to me when I was a child, or this was played at my father's funeral, and like you can't take any of it for granted. It's like the power of music. It's such an extraordinary thing. There was one time I was in a wine shop, and they're blasting. I think it was Bon Jovi over the sound system, and so I'm at the end of the aisle. I look down the aisle, and there was somebody playing air guitar as they're shopping for wine. Okay, I walk to the next aisle, look down, and there's a person kind of dancing to himself to the beat.
Nice.
And I kid you not, I walk to the next aisle, and there's somebody who's like karaokeing, and they're really into it. I'm like,
okay.
And then you really cannot take music of any genre for granted, because it has an effect on the human being, on our soul, and it's just kind of awesome and profound. I mean, can you imagine any TV commercial or film if it didn't have some kind of supporting soundtrack? Like the emotional depth and gravity of the experience it wouldn't be as expressed as profoundly.
Yes, I agree so much. Nowadays I'm playing some video games, and I play the ones from Blizzard, like whatever. I have a PS5, and whoever is into video games, and the music.
You have an Xbox.
Oh, the music of the game, like the graphics are beautiful, like everything is top notch, but the music, like the orchestral music, and when you pay attention to that, like it gives the entire mood for the game, and without that it would be like a boring game, and it's not that boring because of the music. I understand that.
I took film scoring in my undergraduate.
Oh, that's so amazing. I love it.
Each of the students were given the same scene to score, and it was an exceptionally dull scene. It was a scene from Glengarry Glen Ross, and there was about 10 students in the class, and we used MIDI keyboards and so forth to recreate our soundtrack. And it was funny how each composer completely repainted the scene. It was powerful about how just a subtle change in music can completely render the emotional content.
Yeah, it changes everything, and I love that, and that's why I'm so crazy about composition, because it almost feels like God. I'm creating something, and I can make people feel stuff without having to convince them of anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I have no control over what people will feel about my music, and I feel like it's mesmerizing. It's just mesmerizing. But we are getting to the end of our interview, because I can stay here. I always say this because I have so much joy getting to know people. Like, I know John for at least 10 years, but to have this kind of conversations that it's just one-on-one, and we are talking about, in a really friendly way, it's kind of rare in today's society, because everybody's on their phone and all of that. There are some good things that come from that, but sometimes I feel like we lose a little bit of the humanity that, two people talking about their experiences, about what they love, and I feel like this is valuable to bring to you guys. So, my last question. I always close the interview with that one. Like, if you could send a message that you know for a fact that everybody in the world will hear, no language barriers, nothing. what would you want to say to the world, like the world that you live in right now, like your life experience being in this planet, in this universe? What would you like people to know, or what would you like to say to people?
Well, to quote William Byrd, he said something to the effect of, if singing is such a good thing, why isn't everybody doing it? Maybe it's very Pollyanna of me to think this, but in those moments of making music with somebody else, whether it is high art or whether it is singing a blues song, all those sad divisions that we experience just melt away, and there's no east, there's no west, there's no north, there's no south, there's no Democrat, there's no Republican. It's just you're in the moment, and you are connected with another person in a really intimate and beautiful way. So, gosh, if I could say something to the world, take up music in some form or another. You don't have to be profoundly gifted. Just give your spirit the opportunity to experience that.
Give your spirit the opportunity to experience that, to experience music and the connection and the state of being that you have during music and interacting with music. You don't need to be a musician, like, interacting with music. John, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill.
That was amazing. Oh, a pleasure to talk to you. And for you guys, thank you so much for watching. Be tuned for other videos. I try my best to talk with top-notch talent in New York City to give you some information and to show that we are humans. Like at the end of the day, we are humans. We are subject to mistakes and all of that, and sadness, like all those things, everything that means to be a human, we are, because even though like we are really we really take seriously our craft and we want to be professionals. We are professionals, but we are human as well. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, everyone.
And I'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.